Every generation gets one. One technological shift so large, so fundamental, that it doesn't just change industries, it changes who wins and who loses, who builds wealth and who watches it disappear, who wakes up on the right side of history and who spends the next decade trying to figure out what happened. The internet was one of those shifts. It minted millionaires overnight and quietly killed entire industries that had existed for a century. Travel agents, video rental stores, print journalism, encyclopedias. Not because those things stopped being useful, but because the internet did the same job faster, cheaper, and without needing a storefront. And right now, we're standing at the beginning of another one of those moments. Artificial intelligence is not a trend. It's not a buzzword that peaks at a tech conference and fades out by Q3. It is a fundamental restructuring of how economic value gets created and who gets to capture it. And the gap between the people who understand that and the people who don't is going to produce some of the most dramatic wealth transfers in modern history. So today, we're going to talk about both sides of that equation: who gets rich, who gets left behind, and more importantly, which side of that line you're currently on. First, let's understand what AI is actually doing. Because most conversations about AI go one of two directions. Either it's the most revolutionary thing since electricity and we're all going to be living in a utopia by 2030, or it's overhyped nonsense and nothing is actually going to change. And both of those takes miss the point entirely. Here's what AI is actually doing in practical terms. It's compressing the cost of cognitive labor dramatically, permanently. For most of human economic history, if you wanted something done that required a brain, writing, analysis, coding, design, customer service, legal review, financial modeling, you had to hire a brain, a human one, with a salary, benefits, a desk, and opinions about the office thermostat. AI doesn't eliminate the need for cognitive work, but it does change the economics of it in a way that has never existed before. Tasks that used to require a team of 5 people can now be handled by one person with the right tools. Work that used to take a week can be completed in an afternoon, and the cost of producing high-quality output in dozens of fields has dropped so dramatically that entire business models built around charging for that output are starting to wobble. This is the engine driving everything that comes next: compression of cost, acceleration of output, and a complete reshuffling of who captures the value. Now let's talk about who gets rich. The first and most obvious group is the people building AI, the companies developing the models, the infrastructure, the chips, the cloud systems that power all of it. NVIDIA became one of the most valuable companies on Earth not by building AI itself, but by building the shovels everyone else needs to mine it. The picks and shovels analogy from the gold rush applies perfectly here. When everyone is rushing to stake a claim, the people selling the equipment get rich, regardless of who actually strikes gold. But that's the institutional side, and most people watching this aren't about to go start an AI company. So let's talk about individuals. The second group that gets rich is the people who learn to use AI as a force multiplier on their existing skills. And this is the opportunity that most people are either sleeping on or actively dismissing. Think about what AI does for a freelance writer. Instead of producing 5 articles a week, they can produce 20. Same quality, same voice, dramatically more output, which means dramatically more revenue from the same number of hours. Think about what it does for a solo developer. Tasks that used to require a full team, debugging, documentation, building out features, now happen at a fraction of the time. A single developer with strong AI fluency can now compete with a small agency. Think about what it does for a small business owner. Marketing copy, customer emails, financial summaries, social media content. All of it used to require either a lot of time or a lot of hired help. Now it requires neither. The people getting rich from AI at the individual level aren't necessarily the most technically sophisticated. They're the ones who figured out how to attach AI to their existing skills and stopped trading time for money the old-fashioned way. They're using leverage, And leverage, in any form, is how individuals accumulate wealth at a pace that a straight salary never allows. The third group getting rich is investors. And this one is less about skill and more about positioning. We are in the early innings of one of the largest capital allocation cycles in history. Companies are pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into AI infrastructure, development, and integration. That money has to flow somewhere. And historically, the people who position themselves early in a technological transition, even imperfectly, tend to come out ahead. This doesn't mean blindly buying every AI stock on the market. Plenty of companies slapping AI onto their branding will not survive the decade. But the broad trend of capital flowing toward AI infrastructure, enterprise software, and productivity tools is about as close to a structural inevitability as markets offer. The people who recognize a generational technological shift and position their portfolios accordingly tend to look very smart in hindsight. The people who wait until the narrative is obvious tend to buy at the top.
Now, let's talk about who gets poor, or more precisely, who gets left behind. Because this is the part of the AI conversation that makes people uncomfortable. And it should. Because the same forces that create extraordinary wealth at the top of this shift are going to be genuinely disruptive for a very large number of people in the middle. The jobs most at risk are not the ones people usually imagine. AI isn't coming for the plumber first. It's not replacing the electrician or the carpenter or the surgeon performing a procedure that requires physical precision and human judgment in unpredictable environments. It's coming for the middle layer of cognitive work. The jobs that require intelligence but are largely repetitive in nature. Data entry, basic legal research, junior financial analysis, entry-level coding, content moderation, customer service, graphic design at the commodity end of the market, medical transcription, paralegal work. These are jobs that pay reasonably well, require real skill, and have historically represented a stable middle-class career path. And AI is performing versions of them right now. Not perfectly, not without human oversight, but well enough and cheaply enough that the economics of hiring humans to do them full-time are starting to look questionable. And here's the part that doesn't get said enough. This isn't a future problem, it's a present one. Companies are already making hiring decisions based on what AI can cover. The entry-level positions that used to be the first rung on a professional career ladder are quietly disappearing. And the people who are planning to start there, recent graduates, career changers, people re-entering the workforce, are finding a lot fewer rungs to grab onto. The second group that gets left behind is anyone who assumes their industry is immune. Every major technological disruption in history has come with a chorus of people explaining why their particular field is different, why the nuance of what they do is simply too complex to be automated, why the human element is irreplaceable, why this time the machines won't come for us. Sometimes they're right, but more often they're not. And the people who spend the transition period arguing about whether AI can do their job tend to look up one day and realize the question has already been answered without them. The legal industry said document review required human judgment. AI now processes thousands of documents in minutes. Radiologists argue that reading scans required years of trained human eyes. AI diagnostic tools are now matching and in some cases exceeding human accuracy. Copywriters said creativity couldn't be automated, and yet here we are. This doesn't mean these professions disappear entirely, but it does mean they shrink, they pay less, they require fewer people, and the people at the bottom of those fields, the ones still building experience and haven't yet differentiated themselves, are the most exposed. So where does that leave you? The honest answer is that AI is not inherently good or bad for your financial future. It's a tool, and like every powerful tool in history, it disproportionately benefits the people who learn to use it and disproportionately disrupts the people who ignore it. The internet didn't make everyone rich, but it did create extraordinary wealth for the people who understood early what it made possible. And it did genuinely hurt the people whose entire economic identity was built around something it made obsolete. AI is the same story. Different chapter, bigger stakes. The question isn't whether AI is going to change things. It already is. The question is whether you're going to be the person using it as leverage or the person competing against it for a job it can do cheaper and faster.
Because the wealth gap that AI creates won't just be between companies. It won't just be between industries. It's going to show up between individuals, between the person who spent the last 2 years learning how to work with these tools and the person who spent the last 2 years hoping none of this was real. The shift is happening whether you participate or not. The only choice is which side of it you're on. So, where do you think you land right now? Are you using AI to get ahead, or are you still figuring out if it's worth taking seriously? Drop it in the comments. I want to know where people actually stand.